2015 was a pretty good year for movies, all things considered, and with each year I wind up seeing more and more movies, which means I have more and more movies to talk about. I saw 105 movies that came out this year, and there are only 4 I wanted to see that I just never got around to as a result of their limited releases and my own personal schedule. Instead of a traditional top 10 list, I'm going to give some thoughts on movies that came out in 2015 that I enjoyed and have things to say about, and sorted in alphabetical order. Why? I don't know, my list, my rules. But first, some honorable mentions. These movies just missed the list mainly because I don't have too much to say about them. Ex Machina, a very interesting sci-fi thriller with great performances from Alicia Vikander and Oscar Isaac. The chemistry and unfolding plot between the 3 main characters is interesting and entertaining, but by the end I did find the film to be pretty predictable. Still a cool small-scale sci-fi story though. The Martian, a great return to form for director Ridley Scott, whose work has seen a very noticeable decline in quality for years now. The movie is entertaining as hell in large part thanks to Matt Damon's driving lead character, and the film is highly entertaining on the whole, and the screenplay is pretty great, even if the film on the whole feels a bit like an audiobook. Star Wars The Force Awakens, super fun flick, I had a great time with it. I really don't have much else to say about this one though. The new characters are great and I look forward to seeing where this series will go next. I just didn't get as much enjoyment from this first one as I think I'll be getting out of the next 2. Now, on to the list. Anomalisa. So despite just saying that I didn't want to rank these, I will say right now that this is my favorite film of the year. Charlie Kaufman's latest continues his long streak of films that simply win me over in every single way. The writing is poignant and deceptively simple. The direction brings you right into this interesting world that is just stellar to see. The animation is gorgeous and some of the choices about the casting in this movie give it the purpose of being animated. The performances from the 3 voice actors also just feel real. It is probably the most realistic and human film of the year. By the end, you are thinking about it, and I love when I really have to think about what some of the film is and what it means, and in this case especially how it relates to my own personal fears. It's still playing in some theaters, and if it's near you, I urge you to see it immediately. Beasts of No Nation. This was a big year for movies that just hit hard, and this first feature film from Netflix, directed by Cary Joji Fukunaga, is no exception. The story of a child in the unruly war zones of West Africa is one that flows in such a way that you just see how much the warlords influence the people around them, and how they affect the warlords. The progression of the characters is terrifying, and the performances from both Idris Elba and Abraham Attah creates an interesting dynamic that drives the film. People complain that the film is too violent, but that seems like an unrealistic criticism for a film that's trying to tell the story of African warlords and the horrors of child soldiers. The cinematography is gorgeous, the script is powerful, and the brutal nature of the film is captured impressively in every way, shape, and form by Fukunaga. Carol. Todd Haynes' romance about 2 women in the 1950s is a gorgeous romance movie that uses traditionalism in film practice while staying relevant to today's society. The chemistry between Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara is captivating in every way. You're extremely invested in their story because their romance feels practically vital. It's a smaller personal tale, and some of the choices by Haynes really give the film a punch to it that can really hit hard. The film is just utterly charming and wins you over with posh filmmaking techniques that feel classic, as well as some of the best performances from the 2 leads that make the film relevant to today. The end of the tour. This is one of the most natural feeling movies of the year. Everything from the direction to the performances to the script all feel extremely realistic. It put me in the role of a fly on the wall watching 2 very smart men just sort of shoot the shit, and I really dug that. It was a very relaxing sort of film that just felt like we were hanging out with 2 smart people who were talking not just about smart things, which they do, but it also has them talking about very relatable things. It's a great study of 2 people and what they do for each other, and touches on a lot of interesting subjects such as fame, journalism, the creative process, pressure, addiction, and simply what it means to be called an intelligent person. Major props to Jesse Eisenberg and especially Jason Segel, who plays the part he was practically born to play. The Hateful Eight. Tarantino's films are becoming more and more like events, and with each one I feel more and more compelled to go see them in theaters. With his latest effort, I had a big nasty grin on my face during the entire 3-hour runtime. I enjoyed the film's plot unfolding before me, and it intrigued me the whole way through. Many people are making fair comparisons to Clue, and I had a blast watching the game play out in front of me. The film looks gorgeous, and I'm so glad that I got to see this in 70mm projection. It felt truly like an experience that I'm going to remember for a long while. The performances drive this film as well as the dialogue, and I heard that Tarantino is adapting it to the stage, and I think that's a perfect choice. It's an actor's movie through and through, and it had me in shock, in hysterics, and even in awe at some points. It's a very entertaining movie that also managed to look gorgeous and present some great performances and dialogue. It Follows. I seem to be able to find one horror movie each year that does its job very well, and this year's entry comes from relative newcomer David Robert Mitchell, whose direction of this story is absolutely hypnotizing. No other movie this year had me looking more at the backgrounds and extras. Mitchell made the film just get under my skin with its atmosphere, and the premise itself lends itself easily to unease throughout. The film looks fantastic on an aesthetics level, and the acting isn't bad either. I had just as much fun with It Follows as I had goosebumps during some moments. Still not huge on horror movies for the most part, but I like finding ones that actually manage to freak me out just a tiny bit, and this one did it in spades. Mad Max Fury Road. After years of mostly bland action flicks coming out, George Miller comes in with Mad Max Fury Road, which absolutely blew me away. This film could have been an absolute mess, but thanks to top-notch cinematography, direction, and editing, it wound up being an orchestra of bullets and entertaining as hell chaos. A lot about the film's aesthetics are already very memorable. It goes to show what visual storytelling can do. The soundtrack is excellent and brings so much energy to this insane wasteland. That and the film's characters and performances demand a lot of recognition. Charlize Theron's Imperator Furiosa may be one of my favorite action movie characters of all time, right up there with Max himself, who's now more layered than he's ever been thanks to Tom Hardy. Miller didn't treat the audience like morons with Fury Road, and it wound up making the movie one of the best action movies in decades, bringing new life to the franchise. Phoenix. This German film from Christian Petzold is a huge punch to the gut in every way. It's a great setup and leads to some of the best payoff in a movie that I've seen this year. The story of a woman who survived the Holocaust and had to get facial reconstruction surgery that tricks the man, her husband, who very likely tipped the Nazis off about her, winds up becoming a hard-hitting drama, and Nina Hoss, as the main woman, is absolutely stunning in this film and delivers the best female performance of the year. Her story is harrowing and ends in such a satisfyingly emotionally draining way that I had to put it on this list. A pigeon sat on a branch reflecting on existence. This may be the absolute funniest movie of the year. It's very dry and delivered just as slowly, but there is a lot of energy involved. There is a lot of elaborate work in many of the small scenes that make up this collection of what are basically filmed comics. It's more of a comic movie than anything released by Marvel or DC, by using comic language in film format. The humor is very dry but ridiculous to a huge extent. I don't want to spoil too much about it because I really loved it, but definitely give it a watch on Netflix. I was in stitches the whole way through. The Revenant. Birdman was my favorite movie of last year and a strong contender for one of my all-time favorites. So director Alejandro Iñárritu had a lot to live up to with his new film, The Revenant. It yet again proves the director's skill behind the camera. He did a fantastic job making a comparison of the vicious and brutal reality of nature to human nature. It's gorgeously shot in natural light thanks Chivo, and it's perfectly acted. Everybody in the cast does a great job, and both Tom Hardy and Leonardo DiCaprio give their best all-time work. I'm not usually on the Leo should get an Oscar train, but for once he absolutely got me on board. It's a brutal 2.5 hours, but never a dull one. I was in awe, feeling every ounce of pain anybody suffered while on screen, and I think it's well-earned brutality. Sicario. Speaking of brutal and dark films, this thriller from Denis Villeneuve, who is continuing a streak of great films, has crafted another twisted piece. The conclusion that this film reaches was one of the most bleak outlooks I've seen all year in film, and it's thought-provoking. It's not a flawless war film, but the amount it has to say about the drug war is vast and all of it is poignant. Some great performances come from Benicio del Toro and Emily Blunt, and this film boasts some excellent cinematography and a subtle soundtrack by Johan Johansson. Villeneuve is a talent to watch because his movies are always interesting watches, and there should be very little doubt at this point that the Blade Runner sequel is in good hands. Spotlight. Perhaps the least cinematic but most important movie released in 2015, Spotlight got me mad. I was mad at the system that was in place that assisted the persistence of evil acts being performed by a group that claims to speak on behalf of God. It has to be one of the absolute best movies about journalism that I've ever seen, because it doesn't immediately make the reporters the good guys. There's a lot going on between their research and the fight between releasing a story early enough to stop things from happening and making the story as truthful and hard-hitting as it can be. The cast all does very well delivering the dedication of these reporters, and the direction by Tom McCarthy was solid. Odd, coming from a guy who made The Cobbler. Steve Jobs. This movie is a genius. It's about a genius. It's written by a genius. It's performed by geniuses and directed ingeniously. Unlike the Ashton Kutcher film, however, Michael Fassbender and Aaron Sorkin seem to work in tandem to make a Jobs film about a smart man, but a man who alienates family and friends to a near unbelievable degree. Sorkin's screenplay is sharp as hell, and the dialogue is absolutely on point, and the literal 3-act structure works very well with some great choices by Danny Boyle. The film is sleek, perfectly acted, and some of the scenes have some of the absolute best editing I've seen all year. It's a phenomenal biopic that transcends the genre's cliches and becomes something unique. And that's it for my favorite movies of the year. It's very likely that my list differs from your list, so let me know what some of your favorite movies are in the comments below. I'm going to try and get my thoughts on movies out more and more frequently, so be sure to subscribe for future videos, and if you like this list, be sure to like and share. Till next time, friends, stay spectacular.